All right, everyone. Thanks very much for joining me again. I'm here with Imraan Buccus, who is the Academic Director of our South Africa Social and Political Transformation. Thanks very much for joining us, Imran.
Thanks, Ian, and thanks for having me.
Now, Imran, I sent you some questions previously, but let's just jump right into it so we can make use of this good internet connection from Brattleboro all the way to Durban, South Africa.
Sure, sure.
So, question number one, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what your role is in SIT South Africa?
Okay, a little about myself. I have a background in political science. Uh, was a student activist here in Durban at the then University of Durban-Westville. Student activist in the African National Congress, which is now the government of the day. Did my master's degree in South Africa and then went off to the Netherlands as a PhD fellow. Returned to UKZN to teach in political science. Uh, at the same time, worked in a number of research and policy NGOs. And my areas of interest have generally been participatory democracy, poverty, civil society, youth, and I've been published in all of those areas. Uh, Currently, still have a huge interest in participatory democracy and edit a journal called Critical Dialogue. Worked with donor agencies, Ford, European Union, Kellogg, Open Society, etc. And then in 2008 was an Open Society Media Fellow for South Africa. And in 2009 had the honor of being elected or selected as one of South Africa's 200 leading young South Africans. Uh, Joined SIT in 2010, directed the World Cup program, which was a summer program, and then became director of the semester program in 2011, and enjoying it thoroughly ever since. And I continue to have my attachment as research fellow to the University of KwaZulu-Natal.
Thanks very much. And just so anyone watching this in the future, you are currently the academic director of two programs. That's correct?
Yes, academic director of the Social and Political Transformation Program, which is a semester program, and also a summer program, Education and Social Change. And I forgot to mention my interest in the media. I currently am also a columnist for the popular morning daily in Durban called The Mercury, and I write a kind of socio-political column on a Wednesday.
Well, I'll make sure to look online next Wednesday too.
Sure.
Now, the next question, what makes your SIT program or programs unique? And location or topics? Just tell me a little bit about that if you can.
Well, the one thing, Ian, is I think the program takes place in a country that's synonymous with this miraculous transition from apartheid to democracy. Right? There wasn't any bloodshed. I think much of the world was very familiar with the Mandela magic, and therefore the romance of the liberation lingers here. We also know that South Africa, and particularly Durban, was home to a number of freedom fighters, including Mahatma Gandhi, including others like Albert Luthuli. And South Africa is also home to Desmond Tutu, Mandela, etc. And I think the experiment in restorative justice in South Africa also makes it a really fascinating place to be. And Durban has a fascinating cultural mix. I think very different from other cities in South Africa. The history of Durban is also different from maybe other cities like Cape Town and Johannesburg. I would say it's arguably richer sociopolitically, culturally, and historically, but perhaps is not as known as maybe Cape Town. And I also think that if you're thinking about social and political transformation, it's really fluid and it's happening as we speak in South Africa. I think one is able to see a society transforming One is able to see the emergence of a black middle class, the emergence of this middle class explosion, and one is able to see a society almost recreating itself and creating, this much talked about new South Africa. And one is literally able to see that happen while one is here. So, from policies in education to health to informal trade to issues around gender and sexuality, all of these things are being debated, deliberated, and constructed while the student is here. And 20 years in the life of a democracy is really a short time.
That is definitely true. That is definitely true. So you touched upon this a little bit, but I wanted to see if you could elaborate a little bit more on what other benefits may come from being on your program, either the summer education program or the semester program.
I think if one is interested in issues around social and political transformation, one of the really big advantages of coming to Durban and to this program is that you often get to work with people who were at the forefront and are in the forefront of this whole project of transformation. So if you're interested in ideas around restorative justice or the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, often you get to work with people who are currently working in these areas. If you're interested in issues like foreign policy in South Africa, because the program has such an influential network and connection to a range of people in the academy and in government, you could even get the chance to work with the Minister of Foreign Affairs or the former Minister of Foreign Affairs in areas around foreign policy. So I think a huge advantage and what one is able to get out of the program is this really influential and incredible connection to a number of really key role players in your area of study or interest.
Thanks very much for answering that so succinctly. Now, I know as an academic director, you're supposed to be impartial to the program, but what do you find most exciting about your program or programs?
Well, the program is really arranged in a way that kind of fosters learning. And I think much of what we do in the program and much of what we think about in the program is organized in a really deliberate way. And I think I made the point already about the chance to work with really big names. From getting to working with Gandhi's granddaughter, Ella Gandhi, to people like Aziz Pahad, who's the former Minister of Foreign Affairs. And if I was a student studying social and political transformation, I'd be really excited to be working in a context where I get to connect with big names who were part and parcel of this transformation in a country that has really, in many ways, captured the attention of much of the world, particularly in the last 2 decades. I think the other really exciting thing about the program is we don't think about our struggle just as South Africans. And what we've added to the program now is an excursion to Mozambique. And the reason we go to Mozambique is really to see the kinds and types of connections that there were between our liberation movement, the African National Congress, and Frelimo. You would know that Mozambique, even as a frontline state, provided a lot of support to our struggle. And influential academics and activists like Ruth First were killed at the university in Mozambique. There were a number of cross-border raids when the ANC was based in Matola, in Mozambique, where the South African Secret Service had assassinated a number of South African activists. So we really go to Mozambique to see what the connection was between these two countries, between these two liberation movements. And students also get the chance to learn about Frelimo and go to this Liberation Movement's party school. And I think what's particularly fascinating about it is that the head of the Frelimo party school, Alindi Chulundu, currently the Deputy Minister of Education, also fought on the front lines of Frelimo, but was also an academic in the US at Colgate. So he understands both worlds, the world of a revolutionary liberation movement, the world of the academy, the world of activism. And I think students really have this incredible opportunity of getting to listen to him when they're in Mozambique. So, in my view, the excursion to Mozambique really adds to the excitement of our program in South Africa.
And speaking as a returned Peace Corps volunteer from
Mm,
Mozambique, I have to agree with you 150%.
sure.
Now, just finishing up our questions here, is there one thing that you would want your students of your program to take away from their semester abroad with SIT Study Abroad?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe before I come to that, I also wanted to say while I was, and if I can just rewind a little bit, even though I was talking about the big names, I think one of the really important parts of the program here is the fact that students also get to talk. The program is about really using the local to make global connections. And students also get the chance to talk to ordinary people while they're here in Durban and in South Africa, and to get to feel and hear how ordinary people are experiencing their own country, how the debates around social cohesion and rebuilding a country are really being constructed by ordinary people. Coming to your question about what students are likely to get out or what I'd like for them to get out, I think my experience here in the last few years tells me that students coming on the program really do get a transformative experience, with memories, networks, and benefits, I think, remaining with them for many years. And that for us is evidenced by the sustained contact, by the awards, publications of many of these students who return to South Africa, from short-term stints to, settling and working here. And I think the one thing that's really encouraging for me is that this particular program, facilitates a particular posturing in the world. And whether a student who's been on this program goes on to work in a think tank or government or an NGO or even on Wall Street, I think the fact that the student has engaged with the program yields a different kind of student. And I think that kind of posturing for me is what is probably the critical and most important thing that the student is able to take away from this program.
And as I always like to say to my students when they're talking, they when they're talking in the future and they say, "Oh yeah, I studied abroad in England or I studied abroad in France," they'll get to say, "I studied abroad in Durban, South Africa, experiential learning, and went to Maputo."
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so it's definitely a different location. Well, is
Certainly counts more than being in London.
Well, that's the end of my questions today, Imran. So, do you have anything that you want to say before we finish for the day?
No, well, I think, yeah, that's it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for taking some time. I know you're quite busy in the ISP period right now and getting ready for the spring semester as well. So, you have a good rest of your afternoon there in Durban.
And thank you very much for having me, Ian.
Bye.
Bye.